Welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you for being here. Okay, so this will be the second series that I am doing, and I've got to figure out how to juggle here, guys. Just got to figure it out. But the first series, and thank you all for who have been following and watching, is The Evil Lives Here, that I watch and kind of do a commentary on from the ID channel, and do my makeup. So now this will be a very similar setup. We'll talk and I'll do my makeup, we'll chit chat, but this is going to be about cults. So I'm going to be doing the research on this. I'm going to be taking notes, putting things together. I'm going to try to stay on a schedule. However, life just seems to continue to get in my way. So this is a little bit later being posted than I wanted, but I apologize. I will work my butt off to get on a schedule for you. But first, before we get into it, I want to discuss the definition of a cult. Okay? So, according to Merriam-Webster, a religion regarded as unorthodox or spurious is one. So there's like 5 different definitions. That's number 1. The second definition, part A, is a great devotion to a person, object, idea, movement, or work. Part B, the object of such devotion. Part C, a usually small group of people. Number 3, a system of religious beliefs and rituals. 4, a formal religious veneration. And 5, a system for the cure of disease based on dogma set forth by its promulgator. Probably going to skip part 5. I don't think we're going to come across part 5 in any of these cults that I'm working. Hey, but who knows? So I did want to do a little bit of background on cults before I jumped into this series. So this is why this episode will be a little bit longer, because I wanted to give this background, and I won't need to do that with every episode, because once we get going, guys, you just follow along 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 as we go. So I am obviously going to link all websites and in my description box below, and I'll also tell you any series that I watched or shows that I watched, the episode, the season, whatever that I did for research. There is I did go into first an essay that was titled Cults, History, Beliefs, Practices, and it was written by a lady named Suzanne Newcomb. I have that linked below. She tells us that the term cult was first recorded in English as reverence or homage to a deity or saint. Makes sense. Most of all, not cults, and I'll learn this as I go as well, because I really don't know, but I think I did this a mini search when I did the ID series, and what is that? Okay. And I learned that a lot of cults are based on some religion. So we will, if I can, find that out. And I just realized, I don't know if I did that for the first, yes I did. Yes I did. Okay, sorry, ignore that. We'll continue. Okay. However, when I think of cults, I think of the one person, thing, or object that's kind of leading it, or they are giving their undying faith and everything to. They're, either they're worshiping or they're just giving their life in the hands of this person or thing. So every one of the cults, I think, is going to be very similar to that. But like I said, I'm not a cult expert. I really don't know much about cults, so we're learning together, guys. It's very easy to associate all cults as a manipulative entity that exploits their followers for money, sex, or even any other nefarious deeds that includes murder or I don't know, kidnapping and polygamy and pedophilia. There's just so many different things that can be, when you think of cults, it's all associated. I don't personally believe all known cults are started for this purpose or even do these things. I think we're going to be talking about some of the worst of those cults that are going to have probably every bit of this that I just mentioned. So I'm hoping that when I start breaking it down, we'll find different sections that have different purposes, and it's not all the same. I'm really hoping that not every cult I look at has the same purpose. We'll see. That's part of why I want to do the series, part of what I want to learn, because I really don't. And I want to look at when cults became popular. So you see a lot of them in the 60s, and I'm sure many of them started even before that or after that, and it's just something I want to kind of hopefully touch on whenever I start this series. So I know this first episode that I'm doing today is going to be started in the late 60s. So it kind of just falls right into it. In this article that I'm reading that I referenced before states that in 1978, cults became sensationalized. I am having trouble talking. When the People's Temple committed suicide and over 900 people were killed during that time. This is one that I plan to touch and talk about. It's not this episode. So, but, you know, the term cult, and it just became very sensationalized after what the People's Temple did. However, the scale of this tragedy did bring a lot of light and media coverage to cults. So, but like I said, that was in 1978. The cult I'm doing late 60s, and I really wish there had been more media attention. So another thing that I really want to discover, one of the things I want to find out, is the different types of cults. So I looked, you know, and I break down these specific cults, and I want to mention a few of them that I found, and their base religion obviously is one of them. So depending on if they are a religious cult or not, but there's different types. So according to this web page that I'm on, I'm on a new web page, and it's the apologeticsindex.org. I've never used that site before. So, but this is just a breakdown of about 9 different types of cults. So the first one is Eastern cults, which is characterized by belief in spiritual enlightenment and reincarnation. The second one is a religious cult that is characterized by belief in a god or a higher being. The third one is a political, racist, or terrorist cult, which, it's pretty self-explanatory. I don't think I need to talk about that one. Or I don't think I need to explain that one. The fourth one is psychotherapy, human potential, mass transformational cult. And this is motivated by belief in striving for the goal of personal transformation and improvement. The fifth is commercial, multi-marketing cults, which are sustained by the belief in attaining power, wealth, and status. And believe it or not, there are a lot of MLMs, multi-level marketing cults, that I have seen. I haven't decided if I'm going to do one of those yet. So New Age cults, number 6, is founded in the belief that you are God philosophy. 7, you have the occult, the satanic or black magic cults. And obviously that's generated through the belief of supernatural powers and the worship, and some of them even of the worship of Satan. Okay, number 8, one-on-one or family cults, which is based on the belief that one partner, parent, or teacher are above everyone. And I do touch on this one in another series, in another episode. And number 9, cult of personality, which are rooted in the belief that reflects the charismatic personality and interest of the revered leader. I personally just thought it was a cool song, but the cult of personality. So, we will go through these cults that I do, and I'll try to specify if it's still active today, and give you a background all the way up to the beginning. Anything that is of importance, if there's famous people, deaths, murder, sex, we'll do it all. I also want to look at how many of them are ran by women. How many are ran by women? How many are started by women? That is something that I'm not real sure I'm going to get into in this series, and I think it is very interesting. So I plan to do 10 episodes of this, just as a start, because The Evil Lives Here is my main episode. But if this hits off and you guys love it, and if I enjoy it, I could really do seasons 2, 3, and 4, and probably hit more on that, depending on feedback from you guys and what you think and how it works for me. So there's just a whole lot more as I do these stories. And I found that out doing this one, just a lot. So, if you've watched my Evil Lives Here series, you've seen that I've had a couple episodes, I think 3. So I'm in season 3, episode 2. I just did season 3, episode 2. And I have touched cults 3 different times in these episodes. And I kind of went on a tangent on one of them and really started looking like, okay, what the heck am I watching? What is going on? How the hell did this even get by? How does this even happen? And then I started looking at different things, and that really got my interest into cults and doing this. So hopefully you saw that episode and you saw what I'm talking about and where I'm at now from doing that one episode. So, I said 10. I've actually decided to do 12 apparently. I didn't realize I had 12, but that's okay. Here's all the 12 cults I'll be doing. And today's episode will be the cult Children of God. And then I'll be doing the Unification Church, the Manson family, Heaven's Gate, the People's Temple, the Fundamentalists, Latter-day Saints. And the reason I'm doing this one is there was two of the 3 Evil Live Here episodes I did was about different sects of this cult and stories on that. So I was like, okay, we've got to look into this. What's going on? The Branch Davidians, Love Has Won, Angels Landing, and the House of Yahweh. And that was the 3rd episode I did on Evil Lives Here. So there's so many more. Like, seriously, so many more. And that's where I'm like, if this goes well, we can continue doing this because this can probably be non-stop depending. Some of these you've heard, some of them you haven't. I'm going to try to I saw a couple in there that I think are less known. So I'm trying to get some of those. And obviously the further I go, say if I do another season, the second, I want it to have, women-owned, more, not women-owned, women-ran, more other countries, because a lot of these that we don't know are from other countries, and just really explore what this is. So I'm going to really rely on you guys telling me what you think and how you do that. So anyways, this episode's going to be a long one, and I apologize just because my intro is going to be longer than usual. I wasn't expecting to come across what I did on this cult that I'm doing, and it's a doozy. So we are here. We are talking about the Children of God. So let's jump right into the story. Buckle up, grab a drink, grab a snack, get comfy. But to tell this story, I have to start from the beginning. So the Children of God was founded in Huntington Beach, California by David Brandt Berg in 1968.
David Berg was born February 18th, 1919 in Oakland, California to, and forgive me, I'm going to mispronounce his name, Hjalmar Emanuel Berg and Reverend Virginia Lee Brandt. Both parents were Christian evangelists.
He was a pastor and an evangelist for the Christian and Missionary Alliance and leader of a youth ministry called Teen Challenge. Berg recruited his members from the hippies and outcasts that flocked to Southern California during the free love era. So the group of young men and women would roam the streets recruiting others to join his group. So in 1969, that's when Berg left the Teen Challenge, and formed his own group called Light Club, which he eventually renamed, and it became the Children of God. And at some point through all this, he changed his name to Moses David, But for this story, I'm going to stick strictly to either David or Berg. Mostly, I think I'm going to call him Berg, not to confuse the situation. But just let you know that at some point, he did change his name. So he convinced his followers that God appointed him as the second coming of Christ. And he was the, quote, end time prophet, end quote. So, and he would play a significant part in the second coming of Christ. also maintained that he had a spirit guide named Abraham who relayed divining messages to him. And I will apologize, we've got a heck of a storm, and I feel like, it's kind of appropriate as we're talking about this cult. Anyways, so soon Berg started making demands of his followers, and they were demands like every member must donate everything they owned to join the group. So they had to get rid of everything, and all the money that they had when they sold their product or items, and any existing money they had went to Berg and the Children of God. Then they were to sever all contacts with anybody outside of their family that wasn't joining the cult with them. So, and finally, to become part of this group, they had to leave, quit, whatever you want to say, any current employment that they had. So they had to be completely 100% reliant on David and this group. So he was growing his group leaps and bounds, and in a few years he had like 120 different communes across the world. I mean, that we were everywhere, and we'll talk a little bit more about that coming up. Some of the places I don't touch a lot. I do at the end tell you where you can find this information, but they were all over the world. So for the members of the Children of God, or the COG, every detail of their life was ruled by Berg. He controlled everything they did, even how many sheets of toilet paper they can use when they go to the bathroom. Right? That's kind of... And, of course, he controlled what jobs they would have within the commune. And there were 12 different sections, groups, that they would be divided into, all based on the 12 apostles of God. And they would have they would have different jobs and things that they had to do. Traditional families were not valued in this way of life for them. So what they did was, every member of the family, it was a large family, Berg was the center. So Mr. David was the center of each family unit. And parents didn't have control over their children. That wasn't the system this was. So all parental control was authority and abdicated to the community. So anything that happened as a community, they did it as a group. So there was also a hierarchy. I'm struggling with words today. Please excuse me. But there was a hierarchy. And of course, you had your top, which would be Berg, his people under him, and then you had your low. The top of the hierarchy got the best of everything. Let's say they got the best food, the best clothes, the best jobs, the best everything. Any supplies that was needed, anything that could be given was, done so. And the rest was divvied among the lower half of that hierarchy. So this type of system meant that no one was permitted to be alone, even going to the bathroom. Somebody had to be with you at all the time. And he was constantly, either he was reading or he had one of his followers read Bible quotes and scripture, whatever, all day, every day through the loudspeaker. So I think what my understanding is that he had somebody every day come in and would read this scripture, and it would go from the time they went to bed, or the time they woke up, to the time they went to bed. It was non-stop. So the Children of God believed that mental and physical illnesses was linked to your religious beliefs. If you were depressed, you were possessed by demons. And you were treated inhumanely. I mean, because obviously, as you can imagine, they wanted to get rid of said demons. So, you know, if you had any kind of illness, and in one case, this girl, and she didn't say how old she is, but she was a younger, I think, if I'm remembering, I think she was about a teenager. But she developed lupus, and she wouldn't go outside very often because it hurt. So she would stay in the house and read. And she had wrote a letter or talked to Bergs. They were really big on letters. And he told her the reason she had lupus was she was being punished because the commune frowned upon reading unless it was approved by him. So, yeah, she had lupus because she decided to read books that were not pre-approved. There is also another story that we will get to. I'll mention her a couple times. They claim she was possessed by demons, and she deserves her own story. And just remember I said that because her story is wild. But, yeah, her name was Mary, Merry. So, Berg eventually moved his headquarters from the California location to Arizona, claiming that he had been given this revelation by his spirit guide that they were going to be hit by an earthquake and all of California was going to crumble. I don't know, something major like that. But, so he moved. And it was funny because it stated, obviously, none of Berg's end of the world predictions came true. Yeah, well, we didn't expect less, did we? So an interesting fact that I found was that many cults were formed during this time period in California, during the free love movement, the free love era. And I mean, cults including, and this is to your opinion, I'm not touching this, but Scientology, Manson family was through all this time. And other than it being that hippie and free love movement time, there really is no other explanation. I just think during this time there was a lot of people trying to find out who they were, what they were doing, you know, the meaning of life, and they just became a little bit more susceptible to certain leaders, certain things that were being said to them, or, you know, I just think they were more susceptible. But I did find that interesting. I mean, during this time, that Berg was setting up the Children of God, there was many other, I guess, options if you were looking for a good cult to join. And I make light of it, but it really isn't anything to make light of other than the fact that you kind of got to get through this, especially this story in particular. So, yeah, I just found that, I don't know, interesting is really not the right word, but I guess it is, because the reason I'm doing this series is because I find all this stuff interesting. So, yeah, to find that interesting probably isn't as much of a isn't much of a bad thing as I'm thinking it is. But here's where I'm just going to tell you, okay? So Berg encouraged female members to recruit new members into the cult, or their group. He didn't call it a cult. He called it their group, their commune. But he wanted them to recruit new members through sex, a practice he called flirty fishing.
Berg would quote Matthew 4:19 of the Bible to explain his concept of flirty fishing. Matthew 4:19 says, "Follow me, and I will make you fishers of men."
So the women were to go to bars to pick up men, and they were to seduce them, to bring them over and talk about God. So, yeah, he was essentially pimping his female members out, right? And in his being Berg, in Berg's 1979 annual report that he sent out to all the communes, he stated, and I quote, his evangelist had witnessed to over 250,000 souls, loved over 25,000 of them, and won about 19,000 to the Lord. End quote. That's just all kinds of gross. Just all kinds of gross. So sexual contact with potential converts became routine within the membership. And in some cases, the family would use escort services to identify potential targets for these women to go and seduce. So obviously he's all about love, free love. We'll definitely get into all that as well. But then it became obviously open sexual relationships between members. Even if they were married, open sexual relations was encouraged. And birth control was not encouraged. They were not allowed to use birth control. So, lots of pregnancies. And Berg just thought that was great because that was how he was going to continue to grow his membership, by bringing in more babies, more numbers, whatever. But, and this is where it gets very, very difficult. Berg also encouraged sex with children. He is noted as saying, and I quote, "God created boys and girls to have children by about the age 12 years of age," end quote. Yeah, I'm kind of just lost for words on what to say about this despicable person. So several former members that did get out of the group have stated publicly that they were sexually abused and beaten while in the group. So, of course, the group has to make money somehow, right? And Berg did this a couple ways. One is, at first it was just simple. They was setting up like on corners or whatever you want to say, downtown somewhere, and they would sing for money, right? Just whatever money was popped into their bucket while they were out there. But obviously you're not, well, I won't say obviously, I don't know, I've never done it. You can make a lot of money, but it wasn't enough for Berg, which I don't think much of anything is enough for this man. So he set it up where they had a recording studio, and then these mostly children would there was an adult group and a children group. I don't want to confuse it. There was two groups, but they would start recording tapes and such, and then they would start selling these, and they would sing gospels. So it kind of just became a thing that they do, and then they would sell them door to door or anyway else. So like I said, there was a female and adult version of this, and he formed this group, and for the children, his granddaughter was one of the main singers. So I mean, he was all into it. And then besides these recording, they sold Moe's letters, is what Berg called them, and he was a pretty decent illustrator, and he would write these prophecies or whatever, and he would sell them as messages of the Lord. No, those were his two main ways of money.
For Moe's letters, I never found out if anyone other than Berg illustrated these letters, but if he did, he seemed to be an accomplished illustrator and writer, even if we didn't quite agree on his writings. So I searched through many of Berg's letters that I could find, and there were only a few that were appropriate to post. So needless to say, the guy was definitely a creep and vulgar.
So you're probably not going to be any more surprised than I was when it next told me that Berg was just not satisfied with the women singing for him. And that's, of course, they're selling it, whatever, but they're singing for him. Let's get that 100% straight. He is 100% controlling this, and they're singing for him. So he started wanting the women to dance for him. And let's not make any mistake here. They were doing a striptease, and he was directing it. So the women would dance to the songs and slowly take off their clothes. And it was recorded for him. I mean, it even stated, and I guess these women loved it so much that they also made him a special one for his birthday. But, come on, you all knew there was a but. Somebody, and this is exactly what the girl who was telling us on a video I watched, which will be linked. I think her name was Amy. No, it was not Amy. What was her name? I don't remember. She's important to an extent. But what she was telling us was that somebody had this great idea that the children, should also dance for Byrne. And it would be recorded. So he had girls, young girls, dancing for him, doing striptease. And just remember what I said about his granddaughter being in the group. And yeah. And then another girl comes on and says by the age of 12, they were put on a rotation. Now, this said rotation had every day of the week for these girls and their sexual partner for that day. And the girls had no choice in the matter. They could not, So if they didn't comply, if they fought, if they didn't want to do it, they were sent to one of the many camps that Berg has set up. And I will talk about these camps. And so being sent to one of these camps, though, let me just say, is not ideal. It's nobody wants it. It's a punishment. And it's a punishment for, it was not a good punishment. Let's just put it that way. Not that I think any of us were expecting anything Berg did to be good in any way. But, yeah. So, now I want to talk about the many wives of Berg. And I find this funny, and I'll tell you why. So, I have to go back a little bit into the beginning of the story to talk about how this group started and how they became a polygamist group. So, he was married to a lady named Jane and had 4 kids. Okay? So when he started the commune, again, that's a lot. Oh God, Aaron. Hold on a minute. I wasted a lot. Okay, sorry about that. So, like I said, when he first started this group, he was married and had 4 children. And we don't talk much about the children. I try to leave that out as much as possible. But he was married to Jane. And he hired this lady named Karen to be his secretary. And so she started working really closely with him. And he would control every aspect of her life, from what she wore to what she ate. I mean, just in his, typical, like I said, everything was controlled in this group. You can tell I got way too much, by Berg. But in the beginning of the cult, they were very, very conservative. Like, holding hands with somebody, if you're not married, was frowned upon. Oh, how the times have changed, right? So, But shortly after Karen started working for him, they started having an affair. And shortly after that, he changed his views for the group and promoted polygamy using the Bible as justification. And then, shortly after, him and Zerby got married. But that's how the whole sharing started. That's how he changed the rules from this very conservative cult or group, very conservative group, to one that promoted sex with others to bring them into the group for recruiting purposes, and sex with minors, all to justify his own needs. It doesn't surprise me any at all, but it's just awful. And so Jane, the first wife, eventually left the group in 1979, and it doesn't say if I think she divorced him, and she had a new guy that she called her consort, but they left the group shortly after, I guess she stayed about 10 years. The group was started in 68, so she stayed about 10 years playing second fiddle to Zerby with her husband, before she was like, okay, I'm out, bitches. And that's what she did. Good for her. I wouldn't even stay 10 years, but hey, not my story. So eventually Berg took more wives and brought more women into his personal inner circle. One of these that he took was a 15-year-old girl. And she was the one I was talking about before that was telling us about, being a bright idea to bring the women or to have the children start dancing for him. So she was, physically watched her talk about this on one of the ID channel episodes I'm going to link in my description box. But she talks about being married to him and the sexual intimacy that she had with him. Now, like I said, I think her name was Amy. I would really have to look. I don't really know. But, and remember I stated this is important, and we're still not even going to get to her full story. But he also married his granddaughter, Mary. Yeah. So she was probably dancing for him, and he married her. If I didn't like this dude already, I sure the hell don't now, right? So, okay, I have to shake that off. So, I think Mary was about the same age as this Amy that he married, and but I don't think it's really stated. Mary has a huge story even after the fact that I don't get into. It's a tragic story, but she does play a huge part in this commune. So, just trying to put my head around what's going on. I find it funny because I Googled. I don't do Google. I did DuckDuckGo, but I searched on the internet the wives of David Brandt Berg, and I wanted to know how many wives did he have, and see if I can find out. Were they all 15? Were they, other than the two adults? And conveniently enough, there's nothing stated other than Karen and Jane about being his wife. But, you hear, I'm watching this video, and it's the cult members themselves telling us that, yes, I was married off to this man, and I was one of his wives at 15. So I don't know how they conveniently left that out of the story. I don't know. Or left that out of the search. I just wanted to mention that. So now we're going to talk about these camps, because these camps that he made for these kids are despicable. So he made multiple camps in many locations across the country, and they were either sent there to be punished or to be turned into soldiers, which I found that interesting because then it never stated what exactly he was making them soldiers for. What is he expecting to happen that we're not told about? You know what I mean? There's something. Anyways, so he would send them there if they were bad or to be punished or to be turned into soldiers. And one of the worst ones, and this was mentioned by multiple kids, was called Jumbo because it was the largest of the camps that he had. And these kids were beaten, starved, they were tortured, all in the name of Brant's God. You know, it was all in everything that he decided. So, if they were lucky enough to graduate the camp, and I want to tell you why I say this. So, if they were lucky enough to graduate the camp, they were then moved on to a different area. They didn't have any choice of where they were moved to. So, they could be moved to Peru. They could be moved to the United States. There was just so many different communes, and he would move them per his own pleasure and need. And they had no choice. But not only that, when they were moved, they had to take on a whole new name and identity. So their identity was changed. And I'm not really sure why. I'm sure there is an explanation to this, but I really don't know. So, but I stated if they were lucky enough to leave, because many of them did not. And we actually heard from one girl, and she's like, I never graduated. I was just moved from one camp to the next until she hit just about every little camp he had, facing so many deplorable things at each camp. So she never got to leave. She got to move. She was moved from camp to camp for whatever purpose that they found. So, So, Berg also expected these kids to be grateful for everything that he was giving them, and even the torture and the camps and the training. And they were to be grateful to him. You know, he was doing this for them in the name of God. So, let's get to Mary. She was young when Berg decided to marry her. And like I said, I don't know if it was ever stated, if it was, and I'm sure somewhere it is stated how old she was, and I just completely missed it. But she was married to her grandfather at a young age. And when he tried to have intimate intercourse with her, she refused. She fought him. She didn't want anything to do with it. Because of this, because she dared say no, because she dared fought him and God's will, she was severely punished and abused. She was abused so badly that she had a mental breakdown. And as I said, any mental illness, you're considered possessed by demons or something. Well, they were convinced that Mary was possessed by demons. So they sent her off to be exorcised. And she had many exorcisms. Many. And then I think it says that she was sent to Peru. And it says she was inhumanely treated and tied up and beaten. So she was tied up to a bed where they did these exorcisms. She was completely beaten and starved And they used her story as an example to anybody else that had decided to maybe not, or to maybe fight Berg if he wanted something that they didn't want to do. It's a hell of a fella, guys. Let me just tell you, just a hell of a guy. So now, I will say this. I don't follow up on Mary's story. This is pretty much where I left it, but I will say she does eventually get out of the cult. She does become dependent on alcohol and drugs. She eventually cleans herself up. I don't know all her story, but I know that she did pass away at a young age of like 41. And I think it was within the last 4 or 5 years that it happened. And her story, I didn't want to talk much more about her story because she deserved some peace. She sure the hell did not get it in the commune with her grandfather. So now, let's talk about some of the famous faces, some famous people from this cult. So I'm going to start with River and I'm going to say his name wrong. Joaquin Phoenix. I don't know why. I literally cannot say his name. So they lived in the commune 3 years with their family before their parents started suspecting some insidious acts and pulled their family out. So when they were suspecting these, probably about the time that the decrees were coming down on sex with children and so on and so forth. But they left with their children. And they were in Venezuela when that happened. So they were in a commune in Venezuela, moved their children, and moved to the U.S. And an interesting fact, they changed their last name. So their original last name was Bottom, and they changed it to Phoenix when they moved. So, yeah, I found that kind of interesting. I didn't know that he had a different last name, but most actors do. But I do think River and Joaquin, and even the sister has a name that's kind of odd. And I do think those might be their real names. I don't know. I don't know enough about him other than what I read here. But that's an interesting fact. So then there's actress Rose McGowan, who was born into the Children of God. So she lived there. She was born. And they lived there until she was 9. And at that time, her family publicly stated that when Berg started the whole... when they advocated for child sex relations, he pulled his family and moved them out. So Rose McGowan did write a memoir titled Brave, and the experiences that her and her family had while they lived there for the 9 years. And they were in Italy living in one of the communes when they escaped and moved to the U.S. So just, examples of different communes in different areas. So there was quite a few. And I just can't seem to get enough blush for some reason. So anyways, other notable members, and I didn't really research them, look into them, but because they weren't discussed very much other than to tell me they were in it. So I just wanted to mention them. Journalist Susan Dupay. I don't know her story, but she was in the group for a while, and so was the co-founder of Fleetwood Mac, Jeremy Spencer. So there was quite a lot of well-known names within this cult. All right, enough. Stop with the blush, Erin. Stop. Okay. So, Berg died in 1994 in Portugal. I couldn't find out what his cause of death was. All I could find out is, and all it stated was that he was in hiding when he died. I can only imagine why he was in hiding. So, after Berg's death, the family tried to distance themselves from his teachings. And they issued a press release stating that sexual acts involving minors and condemning sexual acts, I knew I was missing a word, with minors, and that any member that was found abusing children would be excommunicated. Sounds good, right? However, another letter went out within the group that stated that letter was just to appease the outside world, and they were to go on and proceed like normal. They were encouraged to continue. Yeah. So, after Berg's death, the group was taken over by his widow, Karen Zerby. So she's the one that tried to distance himself by sending this letter out for the public, but then told the group, just ignore that. We're not changing nothing. But many members left after Berg passed, and I don't know if they saw it as their opportunity to get to skedaddle, or if they just didn't like the way Zerby was taking the group. So because of this, their numbers dwindled dramatically. Like, they had tens of thousands of members before Berg's death, and they dwindled down to 15 to 1,700, I think. I haven't it at the end, but I'm pretty sure it's where they stand. However, when members left, especially the young ones that were maybe born into the group, they struggled. They had a pretty difficult time because they were never taught how to do anything or take care of themselves outside of this group. They didn't know how to pay bills. They didn't know how to hold down a job. They really didn't know how to do any. So success was awful. It was rough. And there was the number of suicides among those that left was very high. And this included, you thought Mary was bad. This included Berg's son, Ricky Rodriguez. His story is also very tragic. Maybe even a little worse than Mary. So Berg had always encouraged all these women to go out and recruit and sleep with men, do your flirty fishing and whatever. But he also required that of Karen, his wife. And in one of her escapades, and I think I don't remember where, it told us where, but she come back pregnant. Berg was excited. Like I said, children are numbers in his group, and numbers are what he wants. So she had a child and named him Ricky. And Berg adopted him as his own, and Ricky became the revered, that's the word, the revered one. And Byrne also, like I said, he was a writer and an illustrator, authored the story of Davidito, which was about Ricky in his childhood.
The story of Davidito chronicled Ricky's life from birth and on. It told what was expected of him and this pedestal that he had been put on because Berg said he was the revered one. It also made it very easy for Ricky to crash and burn, and unfortunately, that's exactly what he did.
So when Byrne died, Ricky was too young to take the reins. And that's how his mother, Karen, got to take over the group, with the anticipation that Ricky would come in and take over as well after Karen stepped down. But Ricky left the church. Now, it doesn't state how he left, or we have a really good idea why, but he left the church. But he wanted revenge for the things that had been done to him growing up in that church. And he decided to exact his revenge with murder. And he even recorded himself. And I don't know, I didn't pull it up, I didn't look it, I definitely am not linking it. But it looked like maybe a YouTube video. It looked like something, I'm not sure how he recorded it exactly, but he recorded himself, and in his video laid out exactly what he planned to do. He went searching for his mother. But, okay, so he blamed Karen And obviously Berg for what happened to him, but Berg was already gone. So he blamed Karen for everything. But she was in hiding and he couldn't find her. So he searched out one of his nannies and stabbed her to death in a very brutal murder. So after killing her, he was in Arizona when he killed her. He decided to travel across country. Or no, he didn't travel across country. He was in California. And the consensus was that he was still searching for his mother. But I think, or they think, I don't think, they think that the realization of what he had done kind of set in, and he parked his car somewhere. He was in California. He parked his car and ended up shooting himself. So nobody, I think, knows what was going through his mind when that happened but himself. He was 29 when he killed himself. But in the story of Davidito, I didn't say that right, I'm sorry, but the one Berg put, it shows, and I saw pictures of his nanny molesting him and touching him inappropriately and having him do the same to them. I mean, he was raised sexually abused from almost the time he was born, and he broke. So he killed his nanny of the time, and it was a very brutal murder. He stabbed her to death. So the Children of God, or the Family International as it's known now, is listed as one of the nastiest cults ever due to the pedophilia that was encouraged and done in this group. Many members, this shouldn't surprise you, but they contracted STDs. Kind of happens when you don't have birth control and you're sleeping with any man that you can. So it altered their open sex policies, but it didn't stop them. So I'm thinking, at that time, protection was probably encouraged, was the only way it was changed. The family is still an active group, and that just sickens me. But they are an active group with about 1,500 to 1,700 members. And it is an international, as their name states, and I think that means there's no U.S. sect anymore. It's all in another country. But like I said, 1,500 people, it's completely dropped from the tens of thousands that they had, at one time. They even have a website, and I did link this down there, or in the description box. This is information on their message, their legacy, their story and way of life. And obviously it's a very cleaned up version, And you can even click on this link that shows where all their locations currently are and where they were in the past. And you can just imagine my surprise when I saw that there was a Kentucky branch between 1970 and 1971. I couldn't find out where in Kentucky, but I did find out that David Berg's first wife, Jane, was from Louisville, Kentucky. So that's the link and why there's a Kentucky branch, and it was probably somewhere in that area, whatever. But it was very disturbing to me to even know that there was one of these in the state I live in. So this is the story of Children of God. There is a lot going on with this cult, and it was hard to stomach and a lot to keep up with. I probably could have gone on a little bit longer. I feel, Mary could have been her own story, and so could have Ricky. They deserve their own stories and deserves to be away from the story here because there's so much more than what the cult did to them. I did try to eliminate a lot that didn't seem important, and there's just a lot. But thank you for staying with me. Thank you for watching. I know this video is going to be a little bit longer than planned, especially with the intro that was included. But hopefully that won't happen again now that I've explained everything that I've got going on, what my goal is for this group or for this series. And we'll see. Hopefully the next one, I can't believe any of these cults will be any easier, but I'm hoping it'll be easier than this one, which was just absolutely, bam, blows my mind away. But thank you for watching. Stay safe. Be good. And until next time, goodbye.